Welcome to the last Haftarah class of our yearly cycle and our last Haftarah class together. And although we have not done all of them, we've done many, many of them, missed a few here and there. And so we can't do a full siyum because we have not learned all of the Haftarah or all of the Sefer, the Sefarim of the Haftarah in depth, but I think this is a nice opportunity for us to sort of wrap up the study in an intentional way. And I chose the Haftarah of V'zot HaBracha because it is the last one, and also because I think it highlights a lot of the themes we've explored thus far. As we say in a siyum, Hadran alach, we'll return to them. As we know, if we sit in Shul this Shabbat, we'll hear the Haftarah for Breshit again. And I hope that some of our learning will sort of echo in our ears as we hear the Haftarot in this cycle. So with no further ado, let me share the source sheet here and we can get started. So the first interesting thing to note while I pull it up here is that this is an excellent example of a lack of clarity of which Haftarah we should even be reading this time. When I read that, I knew we had to do this one. I love these confusing decisions about which Haftarot to read. So, and this is, we have learned a lot of Daf Lamed Aleph, Amud Aleph of Megillah, because that is the page which we keep returning to that outlines which Torah readings and Haftarot are read throughout the year on special occasions. And we've read a lot of the Tosfot and Rashi on this page. Like, I think it's, when I looked back in my own full page of the Daf of Gemara, I was sort of struck by how much of it we had covered in some way or another. So our last time looking at Daf Lamed Aleph, the Gemara tells us pretty straightforwardly, Ushar kol yemot hachag, korim bekorbanot hachag, right? On Sukkot, if you've been at shul these mornings, we read the part of the korban that was offered on that day of Yantif. Yom Tov ha'acharon, korim kol ha'bechor. On Shmini Atzeret, we read a different portion from the Torah, the mitzvot v'chukim ubachar, from Devarim, umaftirin vayhi kekalot Shlomo, and we read from Malachim Aleph about when Shlomo davened. And then lemachar, right? When we're in Chutz La'aretz on Simchat Torah, korin v'zot habracha. That is what we will in fact read in shul. Umaftirin via amod Shlomo, and you can see that it's very close. It's the immediately preceding 20 psukim before the first day's Haftarah. So there is something that deeply connects the Torah reading to this section of Malachim Aleph, to the Haftarot. However, as you will see, we are not going to read that in shul. We're not going to look at it today because we just don't do this, which really worries the Tosfot. Right, already at the time of the Rishonim, at the time of the Tosfot, the minhag is clearly not to read V'ya'amod Shlomo. And so here, lemachar karim v'zot habracha maftirin v'yamod Shlomo v'yesh mekomot shenahagu lahaftir v'yihi acharei mot Moshe, which is what we are going to read. He says there is a custom to read the Haftarah of the days after Moshe passed. That's the very first parak of Yehoshua, which is what we read. V'shibushu, this is a gross error, is how it's translated. Shahare hashas eino merkein. Tosfot is saying, look, in the Gemara, it doesn't say read Yehoshua, it says read Malachim Aleph. Like, what are we doing? V'yesh omrim sherav Hai Gaon tikein lomar. Some say that Rav Hai Gaon instituted this reading of V'yihi acharei mot Moshe, aval einan yodin hasvara I shana seder hashas, but we don't know the reason he changed the order. So what the Tosfot is reflecting is what is certainly true. In the Gaonic times, it was starting to be that there was a diversion from the Gemara. Rav Sadia Gaon cites our own custom, as does Rav Hai Gaon. Rav Amram Gaon cites both. The Rosh and the Rambam, the Rishonim, cite both. But it seems that over time, the battle to read Malachim Aleph instead of Yehoshua was lost. And we really don't know why, right? As Tosfot says, it seems like it's a gross error, but yet it is what we do. Every shul will read Yehoshua on Friday, not Melachim Aleph. So I think that's super interesting. I think that part of it is because they wanted, the people wanted something that felt more resonant. And so I brought this piece of Rav Moshe Lichtenstein. I have used him heavily to prepare for Shir, and some of his works have trickled into class as well. And so I wanted to include him, and also that I think he really sums up a lot of what we've talked about, right? Which is, what is the job of the Haftarah? Is it the matter of the holiday? In which case we should choose a Haftarah that deals with the blessing that was given to the people, right? Which is why we read Zot HaBracha and Shmini Atzeret. Or do we want it to reflect the content of the Parsha? For we are dealing here with a unique situation in which the reading of the Yom Tov is also one of the weekly Parshiot, right? First stop here is to say, normally on Yantif, we don't read a regular Parsha, right? We read something related to the Chag in some way. Only on Shmini Atzeret in Israel, Simchat Torah in America, do we read the Parsha. Zot HaBracha is the last Parsha in the Torah. And so the question is, it's kind of like Hanukkah, right? On Hanukkah,
yeah, that's interesting.
there are those sort of same questions. And so what are we going to focus on? So now, according to the thesis developed over the course of this series, which I tried to develop over the course of our time together, the primary function of the Haftarah is to relate to the existential condition of man in the framework of the yearly cycle and the cycle of life, right? Thinking about like Rosh Chodesh and Hanukkah and the all the special parshiot of Para and HaChodesh and Shkalim, right, that come around Purim and Pesach time, and all of the summer haftarot that are about the Tisha B'Av to Rosh Hashanah time. The Haftarah does not, it seems like when there is no framework of the yearly cycle or the cycle of life, then they relate it to the contents of the parsha. But it seems that, right, as Rav Moshe Lichtenstein says, it is clear that the scale should be tipped in favor of the holiday. And so therefore, we would expect the Haftarah to be about Shmini Atzeret, not about Zot HaBracha. Right? V'zot HaBracha just doesn't get one, just like all of the summer parshiot don't get a Haftarah that's related to the contents of the parsha, because it's always right on Shmini Atzeret. And the Gemara accepts this approach, right? So the Haftarah that's in Malachim Aleph is about the significance of Shmini Atzeret, right? Chag HaAtzeret, because Simchat Torah is not in the Torah. Similar to Shabbat that falls out on Hanukkah, Rosh Chodesh, and the like, right? It doesn't consider the parsha. This, however, is clearly not the case, right? Here, our custom does not give preference to the connection to the parsha over the existential messages connected to the yearly cycle. Rather, our custom sees the connection between the Haftarah and Parshat V'zot HaBracha as bearing an existential message, owing to the fact that the parsha seals the Torah. So I think this is another interesting point, is that in some ways, reading V'zot HaBracha is actually a part of the annual cycle and not about the parsha itself. Meaning the job of Simchat Torah is to be the siyum for reading the Torah, just as perhaps the job of this Haftarah is almost like a siyum on studying the Haftarah. And so our interest lies not in the plot of the parsha, but the fact that it serves as the Torah's conclusion. I think this is my favorite sentence, that Yehoshua is not about V'zot HaBracha, and it's also not about Shmini Atzeret. It's about this other big thing that we're doing in Shul, right? Like, we can't escape the fact that the character of the holiday of Simchat Torah is about finishing the Torah. And so I think that what Rav Lichtenstein is saying is that that's why the Gemara got overridden on some level. And I think that is also about the development of Simchat Torah as a chag, right? Clearly a chag of galut, because there is no extra day for Simchat Torah in Israel. And this idea of celebrating the Torah itself is so pertinent to this day. So that's step one, is another interesting debate about which Haftarah we read, and realizing that these were really set quite late, the Haftarot relative to our history. Yes. Any thoughts before we move into looking at the Haftarah? Okay. We'll tie it all back together at the end. So two interesting thoughts about this week's Haftarah before we sort of pull it all together, is that the Haftarah is is about the other thing I was going to say is that I actually wonder, Rav Lichtenstein doesn't see this, but just like we finish reading V'zot HaBracha and immediately start Breshit, right, that the cycle is sort of a loop. I wonder if on some level this feels appropriate because as soon as we finish the 5 books like of the Chumash, we move immediately into the first book and the first pasuk of Nach, of the Navi. That there's some like way of reading that as the same as starting Breshit immediately after finishing V'zot HaBracha is like this idea that we see the bigger full Tanakh. So as soon as we finish the Chumash, we move immediately into the Navi. That appeals to me. But the focus of the Haftarah is about the transference of leadership, right? Moshe is finishes his leadership. He dies at the end of Devarim, and immediately Vehi Acharei Mot Moshe. We see Yehoshua, and we see immediately how shaky this transference is going to be, even though God said, do the full transfer of power in front of the people, and Moshe did that, right? At the end of Devarim, Moshe appoints Yehoshua and says, Chazak v'ametz, right? Be strong and go forth, you're the new leader. And even with all of that sort of forethought, we see immediately how shaky it is, because how is Moshe described and how is Yehoshua described in this first pasuk? Right, Vihi achari mot Moshe Eved Hashem. Moshe is the Eved Hashem, the servant of God. This has this very direct relationship. Vayomer Hashem al Yehoshua ben Nun. God speaks to Yehoshua ben Nun. Who is that? Misharet Moshe. He is Moshe's attendant. Right, immediately the hierarchy is clear. God, Moshe, Yehoshua. It's hard shoes to fill, right? Often, after someone has served as CEO or president or founding president of an organization, the next person is only there for a short time because it's almost impossible to follow the first guy, right, or woman. And so I think this is like the way that Yehoshua is being set up. How could Yehoshua possibly be as good a leader as Moshe? Yehoshua is just Misharet Moshe. Moshe is Eved Hashem. And so we see how difficult this is. And so the point of our Haftarah is to reinforce Yehoshua's leadership. But saying that, and I bolded on the Hebrew side, but not the English side, I apologize, that the Moshe shows up over and over and over and over again in our psukim. It's like we can't shake him, right? Even though he has died and we have appointed a new leader, we talk about Moshe all the time. And I think God does it purposefully to say to the people, listen, just like I promised Moshe, I also promise you, right? And we can see that here, right, where Hashem says, Kol makom asher tidrof kaf raglechem bo lachem natativ ka'asher dibarti al Moshe. For every spot on which your foot, Yehoshua, treads, I give to you as I promised Moshe. Right, to you, Yehoshua, and you, Bnei Israel, right, and it marks out the borders, and then God says, "Kasher hayiti im Moshe, hayat imach." Right, don't worry, Yehoshua. The people might not see you on the same level as Moshe, but I am going to do the same for you as I did for Moshe, right? And this chazak, the amat language, is so powerful and shows up over and over again in reference to Yehoshua, right? God says, "Be strong. Be resolute. It might take some time, right? But it will work. Stick with the plan is what God is telling Yehoshua. So I think that's a difficult example. And then right away, only a few short psukim later, we see the first challenge to Yehoshua's leadership with Gad and Reuven, the Shvatim of Gad and Reuven, and Chatzi Menashe, when they want to stay on the other side of the Yarden, right, or go back to the other side of the Yarden where they will have their place. And they go to Yehoshua and they do, Yehoshua talks to them. And it's like he knows, right? He immediately, what's the first thing he says? Remember what Moshe, that really good guy, the Eved Hashem, said to you, right? Not I'm asserting my own authority, but I am working under the framework of Moshe's authority, right? God talked to Moshe, Moshe talked to you, and I'm just sort of here to enforce that plan. That your families and your flocks of sheep and other livestock are going to stay in your spot, but every one of you men has to come and fight for to conquer the land of Israel, right? So that had sort of been ironed out by Moshe, by Moshe and God and the Shvatim of Reuven and Gad and Chatzi Menashe. But now Yehoshua is the one who actually has to say, it's time to go. Leave your people behind, leave your livestock behind, and come conquer the land with me. And instead of saying it on his own, he very much is happy, it seems, to sort of walk in the footsteps of Moshe, which seems to be a good plan because they answer Yehoshua and they say, we'll do it, right? That everything you kol asher tzivitanu naaseh ve'et kol asher tashlichenu nelech, right? Anything that you told us to do, we'll do, and we'll go wherever you sent us. But then it does feel like they too, right, are again reinforcing this echo of Moshe. K'chol asher shamanu el Moshe, kein nishma elecha, right? Just like we listen to Moshe, we'll listen to you. And they say something interesting here, right? They say anyone who doesn't listen to you, right? Kol ish asher yamre, anyone who rebels, will be put to death. Yumat. And it seems like maybe that's like addressing a rumor that's come up, right? Some of the people are like, look, Moshe's gone. That's the direct line to God. Let's just not listen to Yehoshua and stay here. And so the leaders of the Shvatim are saying, we're going to do as we listen to Moshe, just we'll listen to you. And reminder to anyone who might be mumbling out there, anyone who doesn't listen to you is going to be put to death. And again, chazak be'amatz, right? We have to be strong and resolute. So it does seem conditional that they are only listening to Yehoshua because they already listened to Moshe and there is this transference of power. And so it takes a while, right? I think it's not the focus of our Haftarah because we're focused on other themes, but this idea that growing into one's leadership takes time and that it's okay to remain in the framework of the old leader, especially a great old leader that doesn't diminish your leadership at all, I think is a beautiful lesson that Yehoshua teaches, and especially in these first few psukim. It's a fairly short Haftarah. This is pretty much, this is most of it. Yep, we just skipped a few of the middle psukim. So I want to end by just thinking about Simchat Torah again. By looking at this sort of interesting Gemara from Menachot and thinking about Rav Lichtenstein, how he sort of coaxes out some beautiful messages. But just to say that a lot of our Haftarah are phrases that we take to heart. Right, and so I just want to pull up that pasuk chet, which is, I think, the last pasuk I wrote. Oh, no, I didn't even bring us pasuk chet. Okay, we'll have to read in the Gemara. Okay, so Rav Ami learns or says that from Rav Yossi's statement, and I didn't bring us Rav Yossi's statement, that is not sort of the focus here, but what do we learn from Rav Yossi? Nilmod afilu lo shana adam ela perik echad shacharit veperik echad arbit kayem mitzvat, the mitzvah from our pasuk of lo yamush et sefer haTorah hazeh mipicha. Okay, so we learn from Yossi that even if a person learned only one chapter of the Mishnah in the morning and one in the evening, he has fulfilled the mitzvah of the Torah not departing from our mouths, right? So lest we think you actually have to learn it nonstop continuously, like it always has to be in your mouth, Rabbi Ami is saying Rav Yossi's statement teaches us that twice a day is sort of enough, right? It lingers in your mouth throughout the day and then throughout the night. Rabbi Yochanan says, Mishum Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, afilu lo kara adam el kriyat shma shacharit va'arvit kayim lo yamush. And so Rabbi Yochanan goes a step further and says, you don't even have to learn a whole parak of Mishnah. As long as you say the Shema in the morning and the nighttime, you have fulfilled those obligations. So I think that this is an interesting idea to think about, because when we think about Limud Torah, one of the ways we can think about Limud Torah is that our weekly Torah and Haftarah constitute some like sort of continuous thread of Torah learning for people throughout the week. And there's this interesting question that comes up here about whether or not we should teach this mitzvah. Right, there's a question: if we teach the Amei Haaretz this idea, this mitzvah that you only have to say the Shema, then they might not say anything more than that. But Rava says something beautiful, right? He says, on the contrary, it is a mitzvah to teach this to our Amei Haaretz, people who are not as learned, because they'll realize that if just saying the Shema it fulfills that mitzvah of lo yamush mipicha, then how much more so is it someone who studies Torah? Like it might actually incentivize people to learn more Torah, which I think is rather lovely. But then the Gemara notes, actually, this is not really a mitzvah or a chiyuv. It's a bracha, right? What is God saying? In our Haftarah, lo mitzvah, lo chova v'lo mitzvah, ela bracha, ra'ah HaKadosh Baruch Hu et Yehoshua. God saw Yehoshua. Shedivrei Torah chavivim alav. Right? It's so beautiful. Like I really love Yehoshua here. He's humble. He's willing to invoke Moshe's name. And now we see that God saw that for Yehoshua, the words of Torah were chavivim. They were very precious for him. Biyoter, like especially. As it says, in Shmot, so way back when, Umisharto Yehoshua ben Nun Na'ed Lo Yamish Mitoch Ha'ohel. Right, it says that when God spoke to Moshe face to face, that Yehoshua ben Nun didn't leave the tent. Amar lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God said to Yehoshua, Kol kach chavivina lecha divrei Torah lo yamush sefer haTorah hazeh mipicha. He says, what were you doing in that tent, basically? It must be that you didn't want to leave the tent. You just loved learning Torah all day, right? Yehoshua was like a yeshiva bachar, right? He was in his ivory tower of Torah. And so what is happening in our Haftarah is a moment where Yehoshua has to become one of the Amcha. He has to become someone who just gets to learn Torah on Shabbos and on Monday and Thursday mornings and his Shema every day, because he's about to step into some pretty big leadership shoes. He can't sit in the Ohel all day anymore learning Torah. Right? This chapter in his life, this is what Rav Lichtenstein says, ended when he was appointed the leader of Israel, charged with conquering the land. Now he just doesn't have as much time for Torah study. And so he has to maintain an existential commitment to Torah through a brief daily study. And the purpose of the study, an interesting point that I did not bring to fully flesh out, time is escaping us, is about whether the obligation is to increase one's knowledge or to maintain an existential connection to Torah. Right, so if you go to shul on Monday, Thursday, and Shabbat, or even just on Shabbat, and you listen to the parsha, you might not be increasing your knowledge because hopefully you've heard that parsha many, many times throughout your life, read in shul. But it's possible that the mitzvah is actually, or the bracha is not about increasing knowledge, right? We think, oh, why must you have Torah study day and night? It's to increase knowledge. No, it's to maintain a connection to Torah. And putting one's daily schedule into a framework in which the connection to God and Torah are basic components of one's consciousness. Accordingly, this command was given to Yehoshua and he became a leader. So, last big idea before we wrap up our Haftarahs. In light of this, reading this chapter as the Haftarah for Simchat Torah is meaningful even for us, which I don't know if Rav Lichtenstein means as like the Amei Haaretz or as people who are not big leaders like Yehoshua, I'm not sure who he's comparing us to, but he says it comes to teach us that Simchat Torah is not the personal holiday of scholars, right? It's not a heavy siyum. Often I think we talk about this sort of in relation to Simchat Torah versus Shavuot, right? Shavuot is a time where we ask everyone to learn a lot of Torah. We open the Torah, We learn from the Torah. It's a much headier holiday. Simchat Torah is the time where we celebrate our connection to the Torah, right? We don't open the Torah, we just dance with it. I mean, we do open it, of course, both at Bariv and at Shachrit, but the goal is not to learn in depth, is not to accumulate knowledge, but rather to celebrate this cycle, right? Because the holiday of the entire Jewish people who are busy earning their livelihood, right? Where Moshe Lichtenstein and many others are not expecting us all to be able to learn Torah day and night every day, but it's about our relationship of the entire people to the Torah. So the siyum that is celebrated on Simchat Torah relates to the cycle of weekly Torah readings in Shul, which is also a practice directed at our existential situation because it provides us with a connection to Torah and the revelation at Har Sinai. It's not a rabbinic ordination program or material that provides intellectual knowledge. Every year we return to that same cycle of reading without making any changes because the goal is experiential and all of Israel are partners in that experience. So I think the most beautiful, and I'm so sorry that somehow it escaped this source sheet, is Pasuk Chet, where God says to Yehoshua, Lo yamush et sefer haTorah hazeh mipicha, that the Torah scroll should not depart from our mouths, and that we can hear in this pasuk the bracha of Hashem, that even when we don't have time to learn Torah day and night, should we want to be like Yehoshua ben Nun and be yeshiva Bochurim and Bochurot, it's not always possible for us. And so the bracha of Lo Yamush is that you should find a connection to the Torah that will last throughout your day and throughout your week, that will provide that connection to Hashem, because it's not, learning Torah is not only about acquiring knowledge, it is also about a connection to God. So I think that this is such a beautiful embellishment of the Haftarah, right? We wouldn't have caught this from the Torah reading alone. And so, as I said at the beginning, when we say a siyum, which we will not say the official siyum now, is we talk about the hadran, about returning to the text over and over. And so I think it feels especially relevant here to say we've learned so many of the Haftarot together. We might not hear anything different when we hear the Haftarah in Shul, but it's about coming back to it, connecting to it again, maybe remembering something someone said in the class that was particularly resonant, or someone's experience that will enrich our Haftarot without having to add to our knowledge base. So it was such a delight to learn Haftarah all together. And I'm so glad that we were able to do that throughout the whole year. I have been in touch with the shul. I'm hoping to donate the book of Haftarot that you read, the big book. I think we need another one of them. And I just wanted to tell you that I have donated that in honor of our group and our study together, because it was such a powerful moment. Thinking back, especially at the very beginning of this year, I think the Haftarah class in some ways really carried me, at least, during a time that was emotional and difficult, certainly. And so I really look forward to us going on and conquering new ideas and new thoughts, but to really come back to this idea that the siyum of Simchat Torah and of this moment for us is about this connection to Torah and connection to Har Sinai, and when we learn together, connection to community. So I hope we'll have many, many more opportunities to learn, but I'm glad to say Hadran Alecha, Haftorot, and we'll see you soon. And yes, that's it. So I welcome thoughts or ideas. I know everyone is probably busy in the whirlwind of Yantifs. I'm coming in tomorrow morning. I'm very excited to be in town for Simchat Torah and Shmini Atzeret and Shabbat, because that comes connected. So I look forward to seeing all of you soon. And I wish you a Moedim L'Simcha.
Thank you. Moedim L'Simcha.
Thank you. I did want to ask what resources you're going to be using for Nechama Leibowitz. Is it the old set made from student notes, or is it more up-to-date going over of her materials?
That is an excellent question that I may not know the answer to until Monday.
Oh, okay. I thought you that's all right. But anyway, I'll be curious. I have the old set with the blue covers, and I'll just be.
That is what I have too. And all of Nechama Leibovich's writings, or many of them, are on Sefaria now.
Oh, okay.
So I will have to take a look and see my plan. I know Bobby also has some of her original
Yeah, note, the Google
yeah.
note, yeah.
So so we'll have to see. I think it will take a little bit to get into a
But if
rhythm.
it's on Safaria, then we all have access to it, and then we can learn together through Safaria.
Yes, I think I will create source sheets just as I've done here, so that we can use the Safaria resources to the best of our ability. And if there's something that comes up that's not there, either I'll take a picture or scan it or something like that. But I think no need to have anything at home. I will bring everything with us.
Okay.
So you know that if you teach Nechama Leva, that you're going to have to wear a beret.
What a good idea.
Oh, a
I can
beret.
dress up like one of my favorite Torah scholars. I'll
She
wear a
always
suit
wore a
jacket
beret.
and a beret. That's a great idea. All right, challenge accepted, Bobby.
You should bring chocolate too, right?
Oh, was she a chocolate lover?
Yeah, that's something I read, that she would pass out chocolate when the material got tough. It's supposed to stimulate the mind.
Oh, fabulous.
Interesting. Oh, I love that. Yes, I hope that we do. I will say, I hope people keep bringing these like tidbits, because I think it's truly a gift to get to know a scholar through their writing. And that's partially why I decided to focus on one person. And so getting to know her as a person and a teacher, I think is as much a gift of our weekly session as her insight on the parsha. So keep it coming.
Thank you. Modim l'simcha. See you, Yom Tov.
See you soon. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.